Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be installing my 8-gang switch panel from Auxbeam. Let's go. Alright guys, so we have Adam. He's going to be helping us out with the installation today. Plenty of experience with this. Worth of knowledge. It's pretty much
of course.
Stickers, yep.
Got all your different buttons. Pretty in-depth instructions. How you mount it, where you put it. Comes with a bracket, circuit breaker, all that good stuff. Let's take a look at it. It's a little bit different than the one I have. The one that I have doesn't have the ability to do all the momentary switching. Or different color changing, but it is still the same one-side entrance. You got 8 different channels, 2 rated for 30 amps, 2 rated for 20, 2 rated for 10, 2 rated for 5. Obviously your higher draw stuff should go on the 30s. Got a positive post, you got a negative post, you got a 4-pin over here, which they got the wiring in there. That's what you would run to the controller box that's going to go in your cab. And then you got a 2-pin that goes to the accessory that you're going to need a fuse tap, which they include in the kit. It's going to be right here. You just tap one of the fuses. You don't have to cut any wires for this. You just pull a fuse out. That's only on with accessory power. You put the fuse that you pulled out in here. This sits in there. You crimp the wires together, run it to this little control board, wherever you put it underneath the dash, or the hood rather, and you got power only when you turn the key on. That way it doesn't kill your battery. And then here's that 4-pin connector that's going to run into the cab, into your 8-gang switch panel. This is all going to go in your cab somewhere, wherever you want to mount it. Comes with a couple different brackets. They've got a flush mount one. That way you can just screw it right onto your dash somewhere, or your grill, somewhere you want to put it. Comes with some zip ties in here. You may or may not need those. Comes with a screwdriver as well. And then here, right here, is the 60 amp circuit breaker. That way, if you find that the Auxbeam pulls too much juice, it trips this, but it doesn't break anything. So it resets itself. Power goes in, 12 volt from the battery, and then 12 volt goes towards the rest of the Auxbeam. Comes with spare fuses as well, and a fuse puller. Might end up using that later. A couple other things in the box. Here is the 12 volt negative and 12 volt positive wires. Obviously these should go directly to the battery or directly to the ground strap. This is going to be obviously your ground that goes directly from the Auxbeam to the battery or the ground strap. And then it comes with one long positive wire with ends and heat shrink already on there, and then it comes with a shorter one. So what you're basically going to do is run this to one end, run the other end out from the circuit breaker. Obviously you want that protection, and that's going to go towards the Auxbeam hot. And that's basically as in-depth as the wiring gets. Here's that 2-pin jumper for the accessory power that we were talking about earlier. That connects to the fuse tap. You just got to cut it to length, crimp it together, and you're good. All right, so here's the included bracket that they use. A couple different options you have here. You can mount it closer, further, a little further out. And then there's just cutouts, as well as some down here if you want to run wires a little bit differently. You probably use that to zip tie some of the wires up to keep your wiring cleaner. Now we're going to look for a spot that we can mount this either like that or like that, basically to keep the Auxbeam out of the way from hitting everything. Obviously you want to be able to open your hood and not crunch everything that you just installed. So we'll take a look at that here in a minute.
And you want it to be like high enough for like not get exposed to like elements, right?
So I know they do have some waterproof rating on here, but obviously electronics and water usually don't match, so you just want to keep it as dry and dust free as possible for the most part. But it'll be good for most people's uses. Just don't bury it in water. Looks like they actually have the QR code on the box here as well. Looks like for iOS 9 and Android stuff, because this is one that you can control the colors that you can get out of it on the little screen readout. So it's RGB, do all those different color mixes. Here's some more QR codes as well. And here's what we were talking about earlier, where you go 12 volt positive to the circuit breaker to the Auxbeam. And then you have the 4-pin that goes to the controller that goes in the cab up here. 2-pin that goes to the accessory fuse. Now one thing with Toyotas is a lot of the time they do what's called ground switching rather than positive switching on their relays in the fuse box. So we just gotta trial and error which one we need to tap. Some people are able to tap like a fuel pump because the fuel pump typically is only running in the on position, but Toyota does ground switching, and this system's set up to do positive side switching, or negative, rather than negative side switching, it does positive side switching. So on my Toyota, Sequoia, what I ended up tapping was the daylight running fuse, because that only gets power when the emergency brake is released, and it turns on the auto headlight feature. So we'll look at that. This is a little older than my Sequoia is, so there's a chance it might be a little bit different, but I know for a long time Toyota's been using ground switching or negative switching, so we want to just double check to make sure which one we use, basically. Make sure it's the right one. But other than that, we'll start looking. Look for a good spot for all this good stuff. Alright guys, so the one thing that we're looking at right now is possible just different mounting locations. This unit has the ACH removed over there on the left side, or sorry, the passenger side of the engine bay. And to be honest, it would be a really clean setup to put it over there, but the biggest limitation is the number 8s that come with the kit. They're really short. You need to have it basically on top of the battery. That is one thing that if you are looking at a pretty full engine bay like a lot of the Toyotas have or some of the newer Fords have, is you're going to want to probably get some number 8, some good heat shrink, and be able to make some longer cords, because these are pretty short, to be honest with you. And you obviously have to have that circuit breaker in line, so we're going to be able to probably go from the positive down to the circuit breaker sitting down below, and then this one jumping from the circuit breaker back up here. But again, that's a pretty short run, so you basically got to have it within 2 feet of your battery, because obviously you have to go around things that are in the engine bay. You can't just always do straight lines. So
yeah, but that's not always the case, right?
It's not always the case. It's not always perfect when you go to put it together. So that's one thing to think about, is depending on your application, you may need some number 8 to make some longer cords. Most Autoport stores only go to a 10, and for 60 amps you need at least a number 8, if not bigger. So
cool. Thanks, man.
So we're probably going to end up mounting it like this. That way we can have the wires coming in to feed, and it's going to be easy to both add and remove circuits as needed, or replace fuses. That's another thing. If you overdraw and you pop a fuse, you have a light that goes bad or whatever, you need to be able to service it. So you don't want to like tuck it underneath something where you can't get to it, because depending on what you have on there, it might be like your compressor, like on my setup. If my compressor fails and I can't activate my locker, I'm screwed. So I have to be able to replace the fuse if for whatever reason it pops, if it gets wet or whatever. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're mounting it. You don't want to tuck it underneath something that might get too hot or too wet. Just be mindful of it. It's not going to be something that you can just hide and never have to mess with. Plus, as you go along, you're going to be adding more stuff as you build out your rig. So that's why you get the 8 gang, so you can add a bunch of other stuff. So
Lockers,
yeah, lockers in the future always. I don't love double-sided tape though, just because it gets hot, and all in the engine bay it might not last very long. But so that's the best spot so far, to be honest. Everything that needs to go to this has to have wires go in here. So you've actually got to have it up here. Got it. Or over here to the side.
Yeah.
So right now we're just connecting the positive and negative line. Positive right here is going to be attached to the terminal.
So we're just wiring up one of the lights that he's already got in here. These light forces.
Halogens.
Oh boy, halogens. They'll probably be replaced by something else.
Yeah.
We just want to do a proof of concept basically. So we've got both wiring harnesses plugged in. We've got the ground going down here to one of the frame bolts. Just extended it with some number 10. I think it's 2 12s going to a 10, so just upsize it a little bit.
Anyway, we got some spectators.
I'm good.
Some spectators. All right, so we just had some, like I said, some 10 that we just got. So it's a little extra. We want a little bit of extra room. Probably use that on something else. Strip this.
Yeah. So I took my turbo out and I took the frames, right? That thing. So I put the turbo seat on it, so I put on the garage chair.
Yeah.
And I haven't.
By the way, I'm learning stuff by watching you do this, man.
We're gonna take this, feed it in here, and we're gonna put, this is probably the highest draw thing that he's gonna have, so we're gonna put it to one of the 30s, which is one of these first ones. Might need to get a little tighter on this twist because the gate's not all that large.
It's all labeled too, guys. Just like what
Yeah, it's all labeled, so the left side's positive, right side's negative. Now you don't always have to put both wires in here. You can if you want, but in this case, because the Auxbeam switches on a positive style, so the negative always has power to it. The positive is what is activated when you hit the button in the cab. So you just have to run the positive in here. So that actually also cleans up your wiring even more. If you've got lights in the back, you can ground it at the back of the body or the back of the frame. Same thing with ditch lights on the hood or on the firewall or anything like that. Roof rack light bars, you don't have to run both positive and negative all to the Auxbeam. You only really have to run the positive, and that way you can ground locally to where the light's at. Just makes wiring cleaner. And then just with a screwdriver up on top, tighten down the gate, righty tighty, lefty loosey, just like everything else.
Oh, because of the drawers.
And then wires in there tight. Get it all cleaned up. Pull the slack out. And that is his 2 front light bars basically wired up. That's all you would have to do for anything else is. And then this is also the relay, guys. This is the solid state relay. So you don't have to have these chunky relays for every light you have. It's all built in here. So basically if you have old relays and you're now converting to this, you just need to cut the supply wires power, and it goes in here, and then now this shoots the power out because it's got direct feed to the battery, and this acts as that relay.
Trying to route this through the firewall.
Yeah, so we got lucky. Ray previously had a standalone relay and a standalone switch in the cab, and that the best thing about the Auxbeam is you only have to run really 1 wire into the cab. So what we're gonna do is because there's already wires running through the firewall, that way we don't have to drill another hole. We just cut the end off the wires that would have led into the cab, right? And then we taped the feed wire that's gonna be to the 4-pin that controls the Auxbeam. Obviously it's plenty long enough. Auxbeam also sells an extension that I believe is another 4 feet if you need. So what we're gonna do is we just pulled back the sheath a little bit. We wrapped the connector that needs to go in for the Auxbeam panel, and then we taped it all together. And now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna tape it all together and pull it through the hole that's already in there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera because it's pretty dark, but there's already a grommet in there. And we're going to end up having this wire pulled straight through that grommet, and that way we're not having to struggle getting more wires through the firewall.
Okay, so we successfully route that thing into the firewall.
And that's how the 4-pin goes in there. That's going to be the communications wire between the Auxbeam. So you just route it in a way that you like, and then we'll have some extra, and we'd rather have this extra stored underneath the hood rather than in the cab. It's just there's more room to work with over here. So we'll end up zip tying that to something else over here, and then obviously you feed it through just like your other wire for your lights or your lockers or whatever you're going to wire up. And that's going to be the wire that basically makes the little control box talk to the relay panel. And that's the only wire you have to run inside the cab. No other wire needs to be ran inside. And that's the best thing about the Auxbeam is if he would have had 6 different lights to wire up, that's 6 different switches the conventional way, which is just this box relay style, where you've got a fuse and 5 wires you have to mess with, right? Versus this Auxbeam is 1 hot to the battery and via a circuit breaker, 1 ground to the battery, and then you have the wire that goes to control the box, right? And then you've got this 2-prong you got the 2-prong tap that only allows this to work when it's got auxiliary power, and that's what makes it to where it doesn't kill your battery. If you turn the key off, you're not gonna have a power drain from any of your accessories. And then obviously you can only run up to a 30 amp max, so no winches to this kind of stuff. Some small compressors you can directly wire to this Auxbeam. Stuff like an ARB twin you can't, they pull too much juice, but I think the ARB singles you can run directly to the Auxbeam stuff because I think they're a 25 amp max, and this goes up to a 30. So that's kind of one of the beauties is all the wiring is going to be underneath your engine, or underneath your hood rather, versus all into the dash. There's already a bunch of wiring underneath the dash. You don't want to mess with that stuff. It's a pain in the ass. Most people are afraid of wiring because there's a lot of it.
Very intimidating.
This simplifies, or this makes it a lot more simple. Okay. And then after that, we'll just tap 1 fuse, and then this is basically done. We're going to end up zip tying this. I know we talked about maybe double-sided tape, but just in case we want to move it later, because we did just zip tie the circuit breaker right now, just in case we want to move it over there in the future.
It's a lot of space right there, guys.
Because there's a lot of space, and that would actually keep the wiring real clean, because we'd only have the, trigger wire and this 1 wire running across the top of the firewall. So there's a ton of different ways to do it. Basically, it's a very modular system. That's one of the nicest things about it. So yeah, we'll do the next step of basically just cleaning up the wiring, and then we'll work on whichever fuse we're going to tap, which I've got my eyes on the daylight running light fuse, because that really on the Toyotas only gets power. Toyotas and Lexuses only gets power when you drop the e-brake. All right guys, one other thing about the Auxbeam and some of the others on the market is they have these little LEDs next to the fuse. I can just pull this fuse out to maybe get a better view, but right there's a little LED. That LED will tell you when the fuse is blown, so you don't necessarily have to have a fuse tester or necessarily know how to tell if a fuse is blown. If you know, I mean, there's, you know, a little fuse section in there. If that's like blackened or not together, not a unit, it's blown. But that LED light will tell you at a first glance if you blew any of these fuses here, which these are the replaceable fuses to keep the system going, which on the cap, which we have right here,
get some extra.
There's some extra spares. There's at least, and there's a 25 if you needed it for whatever reason on this setup. So
right, so the switch is mounted. We got a couple of self-tapping screw right here attached in the back. I don't know if you can see, trying to focus. Yeah, self-tapping screw right here. There's one on the other side as well. But yeah, this is what we decided to mount it up. It's out of the way.
Got good visibility from the driver's seat if you need it. And the way that it's set up is the 230s are going to be here, the 220s are going to be here, the 210s are going to be here, and the 25s are going to be there. The directions call that out. And then once we get it wired up, we can show you that he's got the RGB option, so he can have the colors change to whatever he might want. He can also set these up to where they're a momentary switch, to where they only work when you press the button. That way you can run it like as a starter. If you're building like a rock buggy or something like that, you can, while you're pressing it, it's working, and then once you let go, it'll stop running the starter. And you can also set it up to where, okay, well, I want my rear chase light, which is going to be on my number 2 spot, to strobe, and it'll flash the light. We might set that up today just to show you guys the features. And then one of the other things is, say you've got all 4 lights on the top set up, it'll memorize that you had those 4 on, and if you hit the off, it'll turn them all off. Say you're like meeting up on a trail, it's a night run, right? And you come up against a bunch of people that are coming towards you. Well, you don't want to blind them, right? So you turn it off, and then once they pass, you just hit the 1 on-off button, and it'll turn them all back on. So you don't have to go back and individually turn them all individually on.
Awesome.
So it's just some of the cool features of the Auxbeam. And then again, real sturdy mounted. You just got the wire running right next to the steering column. A little extra right here, so we'll just pull it tight, like I said earlier, and hide it back underneath the engine bay. That way we really don't have to have like a bunch of mess of wires underneath the dash, because that's just a pain in the butt. Nobody likes to do that. And this was really easy. See, there's just 1 bolt down here. You pop this off, and then you just measure where you want it to go. He wanted it up a little higher. Some people, you can mount them totally flat because they have a totally flat bracket. So you could have mounted it totally flat if you wanted, but it's entirely preference. Land Cruisers, you can also put it up on the dash. He liked it right there, so that's where we put it. All right guys, so here is the fuse box, a bunch of different options. Now, not all cars are going to be the same way, but a lot of the Toyotas and Lexus, like I said earlier, are negative switching or ground switching their relays. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap and it's not really a tap, it's kind of just a piggyback. So this, you pull out, you know, one of the fuses in your fuse box. This goes in. The 5 amp fuse is for the accessory power for the Auxbeam, and the 20 amp is whatever fuse you're going to tap, right? So in this case, pulled up a fuse diagram on YouTube, or on Google rather, and this 20 amp fuse, the 3rd one up on the left side. Now this is probably going to be how it's going to look for a 99 to 02 LX and Land Cruiser, LX 470 and Land Cruiser platform, or the 100 series. You're going to get this headlight right hand upper, which is the low beam. So that's the fuse we're going to piggyback on, and like I said, you just pull the fuse out, push this piggyback fuse in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just drill a real small hole in the side right here to feed this out, and then it's basically just going to sit like that, and then this trigger is going to come up, and we're going to crimp this wire to it, accessory power wire, and then this 2-prong is going to be fed into the Auxbeam like all the others, and we'll be good to go. And then if future, for whatever reason, you need to change it, you would just disconnect the plug, and that way you can still get it all separated. Now this is just trial and error. We actually haven't tried to fire it up yet. I'm pretty sure this fuse will work, but if not, we'll be trying probably 5 other ones. So we'll figure it out as we go.
Learning lessons, you know. what are we looking at to make sure that we're good to go for the test right now, man?
All right, so we've got one light. We've got obviously the two front lights set up like we had earlier in the video. We've got the communications wire ran into the cab. We've got the accessory wire as set up as a temp. It's not all set up. We just want to make sure that it's going to work. Positive directly to the battery, negative directly to the battery, to the circuit breaker right here. We just disconnected it real quick. We'll just get it a little closer. But we are at this point ready to test. It's all crimped together. We're just going to double check to make sure everything's working like it should be before we button it all up and tidy it all up.
All right, so that's working. Nothing?
But if those lights were toast, that might be why.
Yeah.
Because I know you had wiring issues before, so.
Yeah, the light might be toasted, so it's not working. But we do have a different light that we could hook up right now.
And then another thing that they don't really talk too much about is there's a sensor up here, so like as light changes, you'll see the color, like the amount of LED coming out of these will change as well. So if you want, we can probably pull up the app and start messing with colors.
All right, guys, so we are going over this wiring harness or wiring kit that comes with the lights. Adam's gonna go ahead and
so there's just two pods. It's got two legs, right? So one leg would go to one ditch light on the driver's side, one would go to the passenger. You wouldn't need to cut any of this. Obviously these go into the relay. To be honest, what you can do is you could cut it at whatever length you need, twist the hots together, and then put them right into the Auxbeam. And then because the Auxbeam has the built-in relay, you don't need to have the rest of this wiring. So all this stuff, basically, to my left, your right, is gonna be cut off and you don't need. That way there's no more extra drilling into the dash. You just wire up exactly what you need to the switch panel and you're good. All right guys, so we did the tap, we tested it, it worked. Unfortunately the lights that he has are burnt out, so we're actually gonna use the ditch mount lights that Auxbeam sent over on that Amazon bracket that Ray was talking about earlier. So we just drilled a hole in the fuse box. This is the accessory power, and then obviously this is just gonna be mounted up over here. We'll run it up in. Let me get it in there. And luckily there's a little bit extra, and then we'll just plug it in. And like I said, we tested this before we are finally putting it all together just to make sure it worked, because it's a pain in the butt to take it all apart again. So we just wanted to do it once. So now the Auxbeam is confirmed to work. The trigger system works with the e-brake pulling, or releasing rather. And then now we're just gonna put these two wires together, both the negative and positive, and then we'll run those to the Auxbeam for negative and positive on his number 2 port for his ditch lights. Be good. What we did there is we just twist the two positives together, and then they'll both go in the clamp, and then it'll be good.
All right. All right guys, so we had to do some minor adjustment. We originally did tap the one for the running lights, but for some reason it's not giving power to the Auxbeam if my headlight is on. But if my headlight is off, it gives power. On a high beam it gets power, but not when when my headlight is on. So we have to pretty much did some minor adjustment and move the fuse that we tapped, and I'll show you guys what we have over here. So originally I had this tap right here. You can see it's 20 amp fuse that was with the running light, and then we moved that to this one with the headlight low beam, but that one works backwards. So instead of working with the high beam, now it's not working with the high beam, only works when the low beam is on. So that was a no-go. But this one right here, we ended up tapping on the seat heater. So this one gives power even if it's just in the on position. And the main thing that you don't want is
for the system to take power even if the car is off. So that happened to us. We try to do the ACC fuse, but even if the car is off, it also still takes power, so you don't want to do that.
The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and scan that QR code, and it will bring you to either the App Store or the Android version of that. The app's gonna look like this. It's called the Switch Panel. You're gonna go in. First thing you need to do is to make sure that there's power on your Auxbeam. Then you're gonna connect it with your Bluetooth. This is for the iOS version, guys. I cannot speak for how much of a difference it would look like in your Android, but I'm guessing it's probably pretty close, if not the same. So right now I'm already connected, but if you're not, just make sure there's power on the Auxbeam. You turn your Bluetooth on your phone, and it's gonna come down right here in the bottom, the name of the controller. You just have to tap that and it will connect you to it. And from here, you have 4 different tabs in the bottom. You have your color, icon, modes, and group. Yeah, let's talk about this basic functions. For the colors, you can change the background color of the Auxbeam. This one we are running green. Let's go ahead and do the red one right now. And that's instant right here. Like, I'm gonna click the purple, and you can pretty much just modify it however you wanted to do it right here. Play with the wheel. So you can also change the intensity of the brightness. So you can see right here, that is all the way dimmed down, and that's dimmed all the way up. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our second tab right here. All right, so if you need to add a button icon, and if you have something connected to the third one, I'm gonna go ahead and click that. You can either have a customized photo, you can select in your album. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna use the default icons that they have. Let's go ahead and add a roof lights, and add that. Click select, boom, it's already added. Alright guys, let's move about the modes. There's 3 different modes. You get your toggle, momentary, and pulse. I have it in momentary right now. Alright guys, so Auxbeam did send me all of this for free, and I really want to thank them for the opportunity. I truly believe that this product is the best bang for your buck. For the 8 gang, you can control a bunch of different stuff. The product is solid, the instruction is very well put together, it's just very easy to install. I just can't wait to test them out on the trails along with the 3-inch ditch light. Big shout out to Adam for doing 100% of the work, Jonathan and Conrad for emotional support. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found value of this, don't forget to like and subscribe to see more of our future videos.